OPB Podcasts.
Live from the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Thursday, January 8th. 2025 was a tumultuous year in Oregon politics. The city of Portland had an entirely new governorate and new mayor. The U.S. president started talking a lot about Portland and mobilized members of the National Guard to the state. And the big, beautiful bill, well, that blew an $890 million hole in Oregon's budget. I am not going to make any predictions about 2026, except to say it will likely continue to be wild. So, on today's podcast, we do not have all the answers, but we have a lot of questions that will hopefully help inform you about how 2026 could play out in our corner of the political world. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Lauren Dake.
I'm OPB Politics reporter Dirk VanderHart.
And I'm OPB's Portland City Government reporter Alex Zielinski.
Okay, so a note before we start this live streaming podcast. If you have questions about Oregon politics, share them in the chat and we will try to answer them along the way. All right, Dirk, turning to you. Let's start off with some very interesting news that happened just yesterday. And it's definitely going to be something that continues to play out in the coming months.
Yes.
Oregon's Governor Tina Kotek asked lawmakers to repeal the transportation funding package. This is the package that we have chatted about extensively.
Too much.
And the governor has spent a lot of her time and a lot of her energy trying to get this package through. So maybe people's eyes are starting to glaze over because they hear the words transportation package, but they shouldn't because this is actually pretty unusual.
Yeah.
Break it down.
Yeah. I mean, we heard yesterday something that I think had been rumbling for a little bit. There had been speculation, but the governor came out and said it. She said, this thing I sweated and poured all the sort of political capital into all summer, this transportation funding package, legislators, I'm going to need you to come into session in February and repeal this bad boy. And let's talk a little bit about the background here, right? Very quickly. Democrats came in January of last year, said, we're going to pass this fundamental reshaping of how we fund transportation. They fumbled the ball. They screwed up, I think, and didn't get it done. So Kotek comes and says, you guys screwed up. I'm going to call you into special session. We're going to pass a modest bill. We need to close some funding holes in ODOT. So let's pass a few tax increases. Let's get some money into the coffers, make sure we don't have to lay people off, and we can have a larger discussion later. But that was a very drawn out, dramatic, kind of messy process. She got it done. They got it done in late September. The problem is that the heart of Kotek's bill, these tax increases, are now probably not going to come to fruition. Republicans right away put together a committee. They started collecting signatures, and they had a lot of success in collecting signatures to force these tax increases, a gas tax increase, increases to the registration fee and titling fees, to the ballot. That means they didn't go into effect in January as expected. There's no new money coming in. And so a big reason why Kotek forced this vote in September is now no longer happening. There's not money coming in to close the ODOT budget. So now she says, I want to cut my losses, folks. I don't think these taxes can survive in a vote. Let's just repeal the whole thing. I promise to lead a conversation. We'll come back next year. And that's where we are.
Okay, so as this was happening yesterday, we sit next to each other in the newsroom and talk frequently.
Maybe too frequently.
Maybe too often. But I know that somebody who is kind of in the know, a Democrat, texted you and said, and I think I'm going to quote here, the Democrats are cooked. So are they cooked? Like, do you think voters are going to pay attention to this as the governor seeks re-election? This is definitely a fiasco.
It's not a good political situation for them. I mean, look, there was a risk if this tax vote happened in November, right? I think some people saw a real risk that voters are going to look at this. They're going to be hearing a lot about these taxes Democrats are trying to foist on them. Probably they're going to reject it by a large margin, and that is not going to be helpful for the Democrats who are on the ballot, particularly the Democrats who might be in close races. Maybe even our governor, Tina Kotek, who is going to be on that ballot. So, I think there is some sense that this is a good political move for Dems. Get this out of the way. We're not going to have a vote on this thing, and maybe voters won't be thinking about it. I mean, I think, I don't know. I guarantee you the Republicans will be talking about this in November. I've said a couple times on the podcast, I don't know how salient it will be for voters. We are a long way off. But I think more immediately, the Democrats are going to face some difficulties, right? So one is Kotek says, we still need to find money for ODOT. And to do that, we're going to need to pass a bill that moves basically money around our transportation budget. There's hundreds of millions of dollars that are currently dedicated to projects, big road projects. So like replacing the interstate bridge on I-5 or the Rose Quarter project that has really been snarled in a lot of problems. Let's reshuffle some money, close this budget hole so we are not going to have to lay off a bunch of people and slash very needed services. That's going to anger a bunch of constituents. Whoever loses money in that equation is going to be upset. So they have some real balancing act to do. Meanwhile, they have a peanut gallery of sorts in the Republicans who have been saying, hey, look, for a year, we have been telling you, don't pass new taxes, reprioritize your existing transportation money, and you can close this hole. Now they're essentially trying to do that. Now, there are real differences in the approach. Republicans want to essentially gut public transit funding to pay for some of this stuff. Kotek says that is not going to happen. So there will be a difference in approach. But it's just, as you say, it is a bit of a fiasco.
Okay, so one thing we do know is, as you mentioned, Kotek plans to seek re-election. And there is a good chance that she could be facing Senator Christine Drazan, the Republican who she ran against last term.
Yep.
But there's some factors in the mix here, including maybe former NBA player, one-time gubernatorial candidate Chris Dudley.
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of the coverage of the race so far, the GOP primary has been, this looks like a rematch. Drazan is the front runner. I mean, right now, Drazan is the front runner. She has a lot of fundraising. She's cobbled together a lot of sort of interest groups that back Republicans. And she thinks that this year, we are in 2026 now, she stands a good chance at beating Kotek in a one-on-one race. Remember, in 2022, Betsy Johnson was in the race as an independent. She drew a lot of firepower. She got a lot of people behind her, and she siphoned votes from somewhere I think the parties maybe disagree about where she got the votes. Drazan thinks she took votes from her, and she could have won without Johnson in. So she believes that this is her chance. You're right. Dudley has been a wild card because there are all these rumors that he has a campaign team, that he even planned to announce not that long ago, but hasn't done it. He has been mum, and I think he's been telling us, like, nothing yet. I'll let you know when something changes. But, if he gets in the race, I think we see some interesting dynamics. He came as close as any Republican in recent memory to winning the governor's office in 2010. He came, I think, 1.5% behind John Kitzhaber in that race. So I think Republicans look at him as potentially viable just because he's been their best horse in a long time, at least in terms of results.
And when he ran against John Kitzhaber the last time, he had a very powerful ally with very deep pockets.
He did. You're talking about Phil Knight. It's very funny to think about Phil Knight's role in the 2010 race, I have to say, because in that race, he gave Chris Dudley $400,000, which if you think about Phil Knight's giving since is just, it's paltry. It's paltry. He gives, just last year, gave $3 million to a PAC that wants to elect Republicans to the legislature. He routinely now gives millions of dollars. And so, actually in the 2022 race, I think he gave Betsy Johnson $4 million before concluding that she wasn't viable, and then I believe he gave Drazan $1.5 million. But you're right, there is this history between Chris Dudley and Phil Knight, and there are also rumblings that maybe he doesn't love Christine Drazan as a candidate. And so I think right now Drazan, as I've said, she's got a good fundraising lead. She's sort of cobbled together a bunch of people behind her, people in groups. If Dudley gets in, I mean, that might partly hinge on whether or not he can get Knight's backing, and Knight would be an easy way for him to make up some of the lost ground he might have to Drazan. Let me just say again, we don't know if Dudley's running. There's just whispers and rumor and all sorts of stuff at this point. So we just don't know.
We don't know, but we would like to know.
We would like this race to be interesting, honestly.
Yeah, it would make it more interesting. Let's pivot to city politics for a moment. Alex, one of the biggest political experiments this coming year will continue to be how Portland City Hall functions. You had a long day yesterday, which I'm sure you'll tell us about. Are you up to making any predictions about how this is going to go in 2026?
Yeah, a long day in City Hall yesterday. I'll get to it in a bit. But first, In terms of predictions, like you said, this is the second year under this new form of government. We've seen a lot of this new machine running. We have, and kind of what it could do with a larger council representing geographic districts for the first time, a new city administrator's office. But there's one muscle that the city council, a new muscle that they haven't flexed, and that's the ability for councilors to investigate any city bureau or office and compel the attendance and testimony of any city employee or elected official, so the mayor perhaps, and investigate issues that come up. And this has come up a few times recently around daylighting some firing decisions made by the mayor's office, and also where some unspent money has been sitting and not moving forward. But we haven't yet seen this been used, and I'm fairly confident that's going to happen this year, since it's come up enough in council discussions, and councilors have a little bit more time now that they've been settled into their roles for a year to experiment kind of with the breadth of their position. So I'm curious to see what that kind of oversight looks like. Will they be subpoenaing the mayor or just digging up some dark secrets buried in public records? Or will it all just be political bluster? I don't know, but I'm here for it.
One of the funniest, maybe not funny stories that you had this year was a Portland City Council meeting about how to change council meetings because the meetings were going too long. And then that meeting went so long that it was cut short.
And they made no decision.
And there was no decision. And this is feeling sort of familiar. What hope is there for the city council to run more efficiently and effectively in 2026?
So this is a very interesting time for you to ask that question, since right now we're kind of in this, it's Thursday morning, we're in this limbo moment with our city council and its ability to govern. So yesterday, at the first city council meeting of the year, councilors held a vote to elect their council president. The council president, as a reminder, sets council agendas and oversees meetings and generally runs the city's legislative arm. It's a really new role for our council. It was just introduced last year, so we only have one person who's ever been in that position, and that is Councilor Alana Purtle-Guinea, who represents North and Northeast Portland in District 2, and she wants a second year in that role, but she has a challenger. That's fellow District 2 Councilor Samir Kanal, and those two were nominated for the position yesterday, early yesterday morning. Councilor was deadlocked 6-6 on who to elect. So this was supposed to be a 2-hour meeting. It went nearly 8 hours. And after 9 rounds of voting and some really bitter personal accusations, nothing changed. Still 6-6. The meeting ended. It will continue this afternoon, where hopefully there will be some consensus. Or maybe someone just steps out of the room for a final vote. We don't know. But the whole saga is pretty emblematic of the state of our city government right now. It's divided. And even after a whole year of working together on council, these guys are really not good at compromise. I get that people really want their favorite person to lead, but that was a whole day of city council that could have been spent on advancing city policy and doing what voters elected them to do. So you asked what hope there is for a change, and I may have a different opinion if you had asked me earlier this week. Yeah. But right now, I'm frankly not super hopeful. To harken back to an earlier phrase, Portland City Council is cooked. Well, and what were you
I was just going to say, I remember a year ago watching the council president election. And we're all like, oh man, this could be really bad. And it hasn't it's worse now.
That was 2 hours. That was 2 hours. And there was a third candidate that someone brought up, and now we have no third. There's no strategy for a third. Maybe we'll see something this afternoon. I don't want to jinx it, but it's remarkably more stuck than it's ever been. To be fair, I do see both Purtle-Guinea and Kanal, the two candidates, as councilors who are smart about council procedure, and they're genuinely interested in running things smoothly. But the fact that councilors aren't able to even agree on one of them to get to that step, it's pretty exhausting to think about this dragging on all year.
Good thing everything's running so smoothly and this is all they have to do, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, what else will you be watching this year at the Portland City Council?
Yeah, so there are other branches of the city government that I'll be keeping my eye on. The mayor's office, the administrator's office. The city administrator's office is another new piece of the city government that hasn't existed before, and how it operates is still being fleshed out. There's been a lot of consternation over who the city administrator is actually working for. Under the city charter changes, the idea was that this administrator, their job would be to really carry out the the policies and interests of both the city council and the mayor equally. Under the first year, it's really looked like that office has been working kind of at the will of the mayor more directly, just kind of going ahead with everything that the mayor wants. And, it's something that the previous interim city administrator, Michael Jordan, identified as a problem a few times on his way out the door last month. So in terms of what we'll be watching, it's how our brand new city administrator, a Portland newcomer named Raymond Lee, how he'll lead this office. I will say that yesterday was his first city council meeting where he was supposed to deliver a report on the council after the council president's vote, which, as we know, never happened. And watching him sit quietly as councilors delved into these accusations and anger, his eyes kind of glazing over. It's hard to say how much interest he'll have in getting tangled up in all their work. So we shall see.
We shall see. Okay, let's switch to elections. The governor is not the only elected official seeking re-election. Most of Oregon's congressional delegation is going to be up for re-election, including U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley, all 6 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, plus half of Oregon state senators, all of our state representatives are up. There's some council elections. Dirk and Alex, what should people be thinking about as we enter this new campaign era?
I mean, I think they should be taking stock and solace in the peace that exists right now before it really gets underway. No, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about the congressional races. The past couple cycles we've had really 3 congressional races that generate a lot of attention. Most obviously CD5, which is a swing seat. Janelle Bynum wrestled it from Lori Chavez-DeRemer last time. Chavez-DeRemer is now the labor secretary. You get a lot of heat there, but also Andrea Salinas' seat in CD6, Val Hoyle's seat in CD4. I mean, on paper, very competitive districts. What's not clear to me this year is whether we're going to see the same level of fire. Now, in CD4, Val Hoyle's taking on potentially the same person she faced last time, Monique Despain. That could be energetic, but Despain didn't come all that close. We haven't seen really a big name step up to take on Bynum, which I think will be the marquee race if we see one, and the National Republicans really want to make a run at it. Right now we have Patty Adair, who's a Deschutes County commissioner. She's established, probably the most established candidate that we've seen, but we just don't know if she has the firepower. So, and then Merkley, you mentioned he's running. We really haven't seen someone of a lot of heft step up against him. And we really haven't, in the past couple senatorial elections in Oregon, seen a really well accomplished Republican step up and take it on seriously. So I don't even know if they run seriously in those races anymore. I'm blathering a lot. I mean, all of which is to say, like, there are a lot of big, important races. Obviously, control of Congress is going to be huge in 2026. And we will just have to see whether Oregon figures into that national landscape quite a bit. Right now, it just doesn't seem like it all that much.
And yeah, there's a lot happening at the local level as well. Something you mentioned that might come as a surprise to some Portlanders is that half of the city is voting on Portland city councilors again this year, which they did 2 years ago. 6 of the council seats are up for grabs, representing 2 districts, 3 and 4 in Southeast and West Portland. So other Portlanders won't be voting on that. But a quick just explainer, these council terms are all for 4 years, and voters in these districts just elected people, like I said, 2 years ago, which is why this is confusing. But since we were overhauling the whole city government, all city councilors entered the office at the same time. And going forward, the idea is that these races will be staggered. And so kind of half of those districts started with shorter terms just to make sure that it won't be just this super overloaded ballot every year. Anyway, I don't know if that was clear at all. I've had a long day yesterday. But TLDR, 6 council seats on the ballot November. And all the incumbents are hoping to keep their seats, so it should be interesting. Also, we might see a ballot measure asking whether the city should use tax dollars meant for clean energy programs in Portland and to spend them on police officers. It's unsurprisingly a controversial idea. So the ballot language and title is being challenged right now. But if it advances, it'll be in the November ballot. And lastly, I think I mentioned this in our last episode, but both the Multnomah County Chair and Metro President's offices are open. No incumbents. Those are some big deal leadership positions. So there's a lot coming up.
Yeah, very impactful. Okay, last question. Finally, here we are. It's about the economy. It's about the economy, stupid. All right, the economy. perhaps the most important issue, we're hearing a lot of talk about affordability, both at the state level and the national level. The governor, she is taking on what seems to be a more recent interest in promising that, Oregon is here to support small businesses. We're open for business. By many metrics, life is very expensive for most Americans. Costs are going up, salaries are not. How big of a factor do you think the economy is going to be in these elections?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the economy, stupid. It is true that people look at how they're feeling about their personal situations, and that often helps lead to how they feel about politics, largely on the national level. But I will say the economy feels like it's going to take a very, very big role policy-wise and probably politics-wise this year. So as you mentioned, the governor comes out a day, 2 days before she announces her reelection bid and says, you know what, I realize that our business climate is bad right now. We've got a lot of negative economic indicators. Unemployment has been rising. We've seen a net job loss, I believe, for last year. Stagnant population, bad schools. I mean, there are a lot of things that are contributing to this fear that Oregon is not a bastion of mountains and greenery and maybe lower costs than the West Coast that it once was, and that we are going to have to do a lot more to sort of attract people, build up the tax base, particularly as we know we are entering some really tough budget times, largely because of some federal policies, but our budget is going to be a big concern. So all of which is to say, Kotek is promising a prosperity agenda where she's going to be really seriously looking at economic development, which has not been something she's cared about very much at all over her decades in the legislature. We will see what that looks like. She's promising it will be a focus. That's the policy side. The politics side is you got Drazen and whoever else is running for the Republican gubernatorial nomination who will definitely be pointing at some of these things. And Republicans for years have been saying Democrats are running this state into a ditch. They don't care about business. They're just using businesses as a piggy bank. And that is really hurting our ability to pay for the services that they want to pay for. So it will be a very big political talking point. The question is what the gubernatorial election centers on. And right now, Democrats are very, very much banking on it centering on the president of the United States and whether or not Oregonians want a governor who will work with him or fight him. Republicans would like it to be about more local issues.
Yeah, right. Okay, Dirk, Alex, we did it. Anything else you want to add? All right.
I'm looking forward to this year and talking to you all about all of this.
You're here for it.
This week's episode of OPB Politics Now was produced by Andrew Thien. Our engineer is Nalene Silva. Our music comes from Audio Network. We'll be back next week with more news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, thank you for your support and thank you for listening.